Hey everybody, this is Chili. Welcome to the shop. We're getting prepared to go to the Sonora Rally, so I've got my race bike all prepped there. The new old 525 KTM. I think that thing's like a brand new motorcycle. I think it's going to ride pretty well for this event. As I've been preparing for it, got me thinking about some things we've talked about with some of our ride clients for lately, and that is flat tires. So let's talk a little bit about what's the best way to prevent flat tires. Of course, on the race bike here, we're running mooses as we would on any race bike. But the reality is that the average rider out there is not running mooses. He's running tubes. And most are not really that well prepared to change a flat on the trail. So let's talk about some ways to prevent flats. Right here in the middle, I've got a wheel. This is an OEM KTM wheel. It was pretty crooked. We just trued it up, and as I was looking at it, we were inspecting everything before going back together. And lo and behold, here's one of the things I find. I've got a couple. Will that focus in? I have two different spokes protruding here. One there and one right there where I've marked in the red. I don't know if the camera picked that up very good. Why that happens, I don't know. Sometimes it's just that way. I mean, this wheel is as true as a used wheel can get, but we're definitely going to take the grinder and grind those flats so we don't have any spoke nipples protruding through. That would be one of the very first things that would contribute to a flat. Second thing I do on every tire, first time I take any wheel apart, is get rid of the stock rim band. These things are just problematic from day one. You can see this one right here. This is just about to fail. They get pushed sideways, and then the spoke head and nipple are protruding out. So again, they can rub right against the tube. So what we will do with that wheel is we will clean it up and make it look like this bright, shiny new one we just laced up. So this is a brand new one. What do we use? Well, we use duct tape. Actually, more specifically, Gorilla Tape. 2 wraps of Gorilla Tape there to replace the stock rim band, and that will keep everything nice and protected inside the wheel. Once we get that duct tape on, we've got drill holes for both the rim lock and the tube to poke through. What I like to use is this little guy right here. This is a conical bit. This particular one comes from Harbor Freight, and this is just the perfect thing for this job. It drills right through there. It cleans up the tape around the hole really well because it's just slightly larger where you're pushing it there. And I really like that thing. Hey, Misha. A couple other details here. Rim locks. I always use the KTM OEM rim locks. These things just work really well. You know, rim locks seem like kind of a simple thing, but I have spent a couple of days chasing flat tires based on a rim lock that was letting the tire slip around, and then it was tearing the valve stem out of the tube. And it was in Baja. I'll tell you, once you have, it wasn't until I could get home and take the whole thing apart and really look at it close, I finally decided it was a rim lock problem, and it was an aftermarket one. So I just used the OEM KTM ones. They work so well. When I'm anytime I'm working on a tire, I always like to take a look at the rim lock. They tend to get rusted down there on the threads, so I'll take a steel brush and clean those up really good. And then I just use a little bit of our white lithium spray to put on the threads, and that keeps that from freezing up and keeps it easy to move. Another little trick I have is this cute little Craftsman ratcheting wrench that is a 13 on one end and a 12 on the other end, so that the only job for this tool is to tighten and loosen rim locks. That way we can do both European and Japanese with one tool. My other special little tool here is my valve stem remover. This is nothing more than the valve stem out of an old tube cut out, and then I've taken the valve stem remover piece that you buy at the auto parts store and screwed it on there, and then I just put in the vise and crimp that so that it won't come loose. And I have 3 or 4 of these laying around, and they are the handiest tools right there. I even keep one in my fanning pack for work on tools on the trail. Okay, let's talk about the tubes themselves. what I've got right here is, yeah, pretty much one of the best ones you can buy. This is a Bridgestone heavy duty. This is about twice as thick as the OEM tube that will come in any bike. These work really well. You know, they're Bridgestone. It's the highest quality inner tube, in my opinion, that you can buy. You're definitely going to pay a little extra money for it, but in the long run, these things work out really good. This is the heavy duty. It's also available in a thicker one called the ultra heavy duty. And I get riders who confuse those two all the time. I tend not to use the ultra heavy duties. They're super because they weigh a lot. And one of the problems with them is they're a natural rubber compound that will not accept a patch. And there have been times when we were in Mexico and we're a couple of days in and we've had a couple of flats. And it's like, hey, you know what? It's time for us to head down the road and find the Yonterra and get a couple of these these air tubes patched. So that in the tour bike, I go through, you know, we're keeping air tubes in all of these motorcycles. So while the Bridgestone is probably the highest quality one I can find, I think one of the best all-around economic ones are the Kenda Tough tubes. I use tons of these. It's roughly the same thickness as the Bridgestone. They hold up really well. They're about $7 or $8 cheaper per tube. So based on how many we may go through in a ride, keep in mind we may change a couple of flat tires every week. These are really economical, and I've had really good luck for them. Now, I've got one old school thing I do right here that I run on a lot of the bikes, and I'm always surprised how many people have never seen this before, have never heard of the concept. So we are basically creating an inner tube liner with a heavy duty tube. Taking an old inner tube, slitting it open all the way around, and then we just slide it right on top of the inner tube we're installing. I have a little extra air in this just so you can kind of see it inflated. I run that on a lot of the bikes. This is the old Desert Racer trick. Before mooses, before really heavy duty tubes were available, this is what Desert Racers used to do. I have bad tubes around all the time, so it essentially costs nothing to set up like this. And it gives you this incredibly tough outer liner having 2 layers. So this combination right here is actually more material than an ultra heavy duty Bridgestone would be. I also kind of like the fact, hey Misha, how you doing? I like the fact that these are kind of two layers. They'll move around independently of each other, and I actually think that probably reduces the chance of a tiny puncture getting through. If you ever take a cactus thorn out, you realize that a lot of times it breaks off once it gets inside of the tire, and if it could break off in this section only, then it probably will not penetrate into this section. Lubrication. Okay, so the traditional thing was to use baby powder, and yeah, that always works well, but I am using tire mounting lube. Why tire mounting lube? Well, first of all, that is exactly what the stuff is made for. It's just soap. I have it on hand because that's what we use on most of the mooses. So I just throw it right there on the outside of the inner tube as I'm installing it inside the tire. That is exactly what they do down at the tire shop for big truck tires. And I find it works really well. Because it's soap, it will wash off clean with the garden hose. And so it's a no mess kind of feature. There we go. Oh, one other little thing here. Let's talk about that pesky little valve stem nut. That thing, its only purpose is to help you install the valve stem while you're putting the tire on the wheel. Once they're together, that does not have to remain on there for any reason whatsoever. If you choose to leave it on, it never screws down more than halfway, just past what your cap would. Never cinch that thing tight up against the wheel. I see people want to do that all the time. And they're thinking, well, I'm cinching up tight so it's holding things in place. But that's actually not the case. You want that valve stem to be able to move around a little bit. If you get a little bit of movement between your wheel and the tube, you want the valve stem to actually be able to move freely without being bound up with that thing in there. So do not screw those things down tight, please. Okay, there's more we can talk about on installing, but those are really the basics of the preparation of really how to keep you from getting flats out on the trail. So I hope that helps you out. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. This is Chili, and we will talk to you later.